Our guest this week is someone that I've known for a number of years now, a chap called Michael Hicks. I obviously want to give him a big introduction, but I think that is reserved for the big man himself. Hicks, if you wouldn't mind giving our network a bit of an introduction, that'd be awesome.
I'm Hicks, Michael Hicks. I go by Hicks in the professional setting. A little bit of silly story here is I've had a number of candidates where I went by Michael. They actually thought that I was the other recruiter at the competing company, and so I was like, how do we circumnavigate this? And so I've rebranded myself to Hicks in the professional setting. I'm Hicks. I most recently spent the last better part of 5 years at Cruise. Prior to that, Google, and prior to that, Grand Rounds. So have some experiences to share with y'all, and really excited to be chatting today.
I've got some fun questions, Hicks. You know what? To kick off with this podcast, this podcast is all about illuminating kind of different individuals who work within the AI industry. And again, that could be a recruiter like yourself, Hicks. It could be an AI professor. It could be a CEO that we kind of work with or don't work with as well. We just want to put the spotlight on different individuals in the industry and give them a voice to help solve maybe challenges other people who are watching these videos might be looking at as well. There is a load of challenges on a day-to-day that we always deal with, so hopefully it can be of use to someone as well. Anyway, some get-to-know-you questions. So I used ChatGPT. I plugged in the kind of rough script of today, and I said no to whatever his first iteration was. But I got some fun questions to ask you to kind of break the ice. First off, guilty pleasure film.
Guilty pleasure film. Yeah, Bad Boys 2. I think it has a really high replay value for me. Bad Boys for life.
Speaking of Will Smith, there's a lot of AI kind of videos floating around of him at the moment eating AI spaghetti. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've heard of it. I actually haven't seen it. I'll go watch it after this video.
It's like nightmare fuel from a year ago, but it's quite funny. Favorite sports team, Hicks?
I am a Bay Area boy, so the Golden State Warriors. I'm a basketball junkie at heart.
If you had one superpower, what would you pick and why?
I'll just go with an easy one and say fly. Being able to roughly be at two places at once. In theory, I'm thinking I could fly really fast. But being at two places at once, being able to take my family, not having to book travel would be pretty cool.
Trying to close the candidate. Hey, by the way, I'm coming around your house in 2 minutes. Landing in the garden.
Yeah. Actually, it's not Uber. I'll just pick you up and drop you off and take you back home.
Literal lift. Hicks Lift TM. Just flying over there.
Well, that was actually one of our mottos, where I was thinking about trying to position like what Cruise could be, when folks were in the South Bay. So, but we'll talk more about that here shortly.
Hey, only 10 years away, I'm sure. 2 more questions. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee. Yeah, coffee every day. The only tea is hopefully spilling a little bit with you today on this podcast.
I think asking probably the average American coffee or tea question, I think 99% of them probably would say coffee also as well. Tea, not so big over here. Maybe on the West Coast it's a bit more.
I feel like that's the case specifically within our field, right? If you were to ask a recruiter what do they drink, I think it's going to be coffee as well.
If you have one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
100% burritos. Mexican food, nothing but. If that genre counts, it's such a dynamic genre. But actually, after this conversation, I'm going to go and take down some Mexican food. So,
where's your favorite Mexican place?
My main go-to right now in the city is La Corneta. I know there's that opens up to a larger conversation, but La Corneta and Diamond Heights is where I'll be going after this.
Awesome. Now we've got the juices flowing. Let's get into it. So I guess from obviously looking at your LinkedIn profile, when I was doing a bit of research for this kind of first episode, and then I saw obviously the field of study. I think it was it molecular biology that you did?
UC Santa Cruz, molecular cell and developmental biology.
Why that?
Yeah, so I'll take you a little bit back to an origin story here.
Sure.
Like I mentioned previously, I'm a Bay Area boy. My mom is a nurse, and so she always wanted to instill like helping others. And one of those ways was to become a doctor. And so as her firstborn child, that was my tenet. That's what my mantra was. Lucky enough too, my first love was basketball. And so my parents were able to take me to every gym in the city and in the Bay Area and beyond, actually, and spent a lot of their resources and time letting me play. And so I actually was able to walk on at UC Santa Cruz, reason being why I went there, but then also to then dive into this molecular cell pre-med major. Maybe after my sophomore year, I decided bio is not the thing for me. I'm not enjoying it. And I was actually had to pivoted to my first real job out of college was I was at the gym playing basketball, and someone approached me about sales and said, "Hey, you're great with people. Do you want to jump to the sales gig?" I said, "Sure. What is it?" And it ended up being selling Sharp TVs. So I went to local Best Buys, my junior and senior year, and I sold Sharp TVs against Samsung and Sony, and I absolutely loved it. It was the right fit for me at that time in life. And so I graduated in 2009. From there, we're still in the heart of our recession. And I was hoping to, and I was thinking I would be getting into pharmaceutical sales because I would be pairing sales plus my medical background, or my bio background, if you will. And well, that wasn't the case, right? So I had to figure it out. And luckily enough, I had a family friend that got me into medical device sales. So I did make the transition over there. I worked for a company called Apria Healthcare. We sold durable medical equipment. And so oxygen, nebulizers, walkers, and commodes. I had to every morning stock my van full of commodes, which are portable toilets, and walk around all these different hospitals trying to push oxygen and these portable toilets. So
wow. I love that pure door-to-door commode sales in hospitals. That takes some grit. What did you, when you kind of were selling your first kind of commode? What are the thoughts going through your mind? Were you like, I'm up for this challenge? Were you like, not sure about this? How are we going to go about it?
Yeah, I just I just didn't see it as honestly as glamorous, right? And of course, at that time, I was ready to do anything and everything, and I was motivated, but it was the first closed sale, if you will, was a doctor prescribing a walker, oxygen, and commode for discharge for this patient. And I was like, wait, this is what it is? All right, this is cool, I could do that, but definitely took some getting used to.
That's really interesting. Talking about there's always a market for everything, and we go through our day to day just in our kind of mindset of like recruiting. And there's all these crazy markets for, again, like commode sales or all these kind of very niche areas as well. But I guess you would have learned as a young individual trying to learn sales. You learn a lot in those times. Again, really committed to kind of trying to do the best job that you could at that time as well. And then again, it looks like you obviously so you went from there and then you kind of fell into kind of recruitment there. So what was the kind of change in mindset?
Yeah. Well, my area, my territory for this device sales was more focused, was in the South Bay, right? So in Silicon Valley. And every day I'm driving around and I'm like, man, this tech bubble, these big companies, and I see Apple, Nvidia, Qualcomm. I see these giant companies down here, and I'm like, how do I go work there? Like how do I get a piece of this? I don't understand any of it, but and I remember the day where I sat there and I was looking at Apple's career site and saying, like, how do I'm not a software engineer. What would they want from a durable medical equipment sales rep? But I had to jump in and I had to figure it out.
Do you ever think back at the moment and just, hey, because obviously you went kind of into recruitment and stayed in recruitment as well. What was it about kind of recruitment that wanted you to kind of stick at it do you think, rather than kind of move back into like account management or sales?
Yeah, I guess I liked the idea of helping someone, right? Going back to one of those tenets that my mom taught me at a really young age. But like finding someone's quote unquote dream job, which then alluded to Salesforce.com, which is their kind of hashtag dream job. But truly having someone, find their next employment was very satisfying. And at that stage in life, I really enjoyed the agency culture in the sense of being in the pit, learning, not knowing almost anything around technology. So a lot of self-directed learning, a lot of questions, a lot of Googling, a lot of trial and error, a ton of A and B testing. But it was fun and engaging and really fueling.
Obviously, you kind of went into agency and then kind of Salesforce, Google, Grand Rapids is as well. So you've seen things from like all the kind of directions, from internal, external, okay, small company, big company. What are some of the kind of real big differences you saw?
Yeah, some of the differences. So, I mean, Google is very unique in its own kind of category, if you will, right? When I got there, 2013, I believe, our staffing team was, I don't know, on the order of 200 to 300, maybe more, but just working at Google on site. I mean, it was just a massive team and a really, really comprehensive ATS. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of G-Hire, but one of it was Google search like on steroids, if you will, right? Like you could find anything and you could search for everything about a candidate and someone's process and how long they were in stage of funnel to the date that they declined, whatever the case may be. I think one of the coolest anecdotes that I remember from Google was like anything was on the table. One of the questions we always used to ask is like, if you had a magic wand, what would you change or what would you make different? How would you get more people into the funnel, right? And if you had anything, just a magic wand, what would it be? And Google actually took that to the next in a multitude of different ways. And one of the silliest ones and very unique ones that I really loved was if you were on Google search and you were an engineer typically, and you typed in a specific number of keys of a term that some of our engineers were actually using, so like a buzzword, just the buzzword of just Google searching it to learn more about it or to use it functionally in your job, there would be an actual drop-down menu in Google search that would say, hey, a lot of our engineers are actually looking at this as well. Would you like to play a game? And so it would start the simulation and get you into coding for, I don't know, 10, 20 hours, depending on how fast you code. And at the end of it, it would say, hey, you've met our bar. We'd love for you to hop into our process. There's a recruiter waiting on the other side. Upload your resume and we'll get you into the process. And, I just found that to be a very, very unique way of really thinking about increasing the funnel and finding people who are unfindable. And actually saying that, hey, anything is on the table here. Any solution is a good solution.
Yeah, I read stories about that at one point. I think I read about it on Reddit or something like that. But I think that's like really genius because it's like our job as recruiters is find the people who aren't being tapped up, and how obviously all developers are. How do I solve this task or on Google or whatever like that? And being able to go to the source and go, oh, you're special. Can you help me with this and give them a bespoke experience? That's awesome. That's really great. Interestingly enough, I wonder if they're losing some of that at the moment, given obviously their search function is diminishing because of like ChatGPT. So obviously a lot of people Googling through there or Stack Overflow. So, but I'm sure they don't fail to attract and innovate in ways that like they're used to also is as well. But as I'd heard about the suite before. That kind of data-driven approach to recruitment is really awesome. And I think a lot of agencies get it so wrong. And it's something that we're always working towards. Even at the moment, I'm tracking who's got the top for first interviews and how many of those are going to the final interviews, and is it just someone to put in front of someone they're going to chat with the company and that'll be it, or these people they're putting through dedicated. And actually that's kind of my job at the moment, is diving into the numbers. I've got really into running actually just recently, and I've got this like Garmin watch, and I've started going really deep into the data. Oh, you've got nice. Well, have you got the two? Is it two? Which one have you got? 255?
Yeah, 255. Yeah.
255 fun.
I actually just got this yesterday, so I don't even know how to use the darn thing. I was just trying to get music uploaded, and I realized we can't do music on it. So anyways, we'll talk more about this at the end, because it looks like you're also running a marathon.
That's right,
the Boston Marathon, and I want to talk to you about that for sure.
Thanks for giving it a spotlight as well. Shout out to the donation page there as well for the 3 people that are watching the podcast. So if you 3 people can donate, that will make a lot of difference in people's lives in Boston as well. So thanks for bringing that up, Hicks. It's well. Right, cruise. So obviously went over to kind of cruise, kind of whizzing on as well. So I guess really interested to kind of dig into like what you were doing kind of over at cruise and what attracted them kind of to you to them in the first place. And yeah, anything kind of about your experience there, really.
Yeah. In general, right, just as I was going through my time at Grand Rounds, which was amazing, and I probably should have talked about that a little bit more previous to this, but also just a quick tangent on Grand Rounds. Going back to what I've seen, Grand Rounds was also a place where anything was on the table in terms of the ability to solve the problem of recruiting. And clearly we did have Google's resources, but like we really had to be intentional around building a process that was uniquely to Grand Rounds and drastically different than Google, right? I think a lot of people emulate what Google, Meta, etc. has done because we've all come there. That's where we've learned, and then we're going to go and implement that at the next place. But if it's not uniquely different, or you're not uniquely built based off of your product's values, leadership, fundamentals, it's probably not going to work, right? If you just run roughly the same game plan as what Google did. And so I learned that the hard way. But then I also was paired up with some amazing leadership at Grand Rounds, and actually saw a different way of recruiting, of are you actually evaluating talent on an X and Y graph of, X being attraction and Y being assessment. And there are certain instances where you need to flex on one versus the other. It's not just all assessment. How do you actually get someone into the role and excited about the opportunity and use the interviewing experience to do so? And so
I totally think that's interesting, because first touching on your point from looking at Google and trying to emulate what a top tech company does in a startup, actually, like you mentioned, there's some good things, but it's probably the wrong approach, right? Because the beauty of working with a startup is that you have very little bureaucracy compared to some large organization. And the main advantage is you don't have to think like that. But how do you get that quality driven approach from a much shorter kind of process where you can whiz someone through ideally in a week or two, compared to a Google where, again, it can be obviously much longer on average as well. I guess what kind of roles were you recruiting for at Grand Rounds? Was it more like just general software engineers and infrastructure people, or was it across the kind of spectrum of engineering, would you say?
Yeah, totally across the spectrum. So anything that you can think about as it pertains to a web-based application that then has tons of data that's accessing. So security to DevOps to backend suite, data platform, then all the way up to Android, iOS, and everything in between. We touched just a little bit of AI, but that wasn't our core function at that time. But I saw the revolution, and I was like, hey, I need to jump into that next. And that's what led me to Cruise. And so I think the biggest thing that led me to Grand Rounds as well was their mission, and I tried it. It was amazing, but then I also got that, and that's what attracted me to Cruise as well, right? Is the ideology and the pioneering work within the autonomous vehicle space, right? Like dynamically shifting the way society will move in the future, really resonated with me. But then pairing that with, I believe, currently today, the most valuable application for AI is still AV. And I understand Gen AI is doing amazing things and will probably accelerate a couple of other different industries. So there's value to that as well. Just where kind of my heart still stays and kind of beats is within this AV space.
100%. And I mean, on a day-to-day, I mean, how integral is any kind of like transportation to what we do? And I think that's why such investment in this space, because it is huge, the trajectory on where we are in AV compared to like 5 years ago, compared to like 10 years away, and the rate of innovation is just incredible. And obviously what we encountered, as I'm sure we'll get to like in a short while, is the massive kind of roadblocks that can be there when it comes to scaling like an AV company, which is not just a Cruise thing, it's like a Waymo thing, it's like a Tesla thing. All of these companies have come up against roadblocks where 2 years ago, where everything was like, hey, this is the most amazing thing like ever. And everyone is like on the hype, because everyone wants to make it work, because how cool is that to be driving in a society where everyone's driving on autonomous vehicles? We're living in the future at that point, not quite flying cars, but cars that certainly driving themselves is pretty awesome. And mentally, it's not too much of a shift away, I feel, rather than an AI bot controlling all aspects of your life, or an AI robot in a warehouse doing everything, like picking oranges or whatever as well. I would mention, and this is one thing I wanted to bring up, is as obviously as recruiters go, Hicks, you're very technical, I've noticed. And that's actually one of the reasons that I love working with you. You're a great guy. I know you're not an engineer. You're not an MLA specialist, as we were talking about yesterday as well. You're not Sam Altman, apparently, but you're very technical. Again, before we do talk about Cruise, I'm interested. Why have you grasped a technical thing, I think, better than others? What was it about the tech stuff that really kind of sticks for you? And how did you kind of learn it and make it stick, I suppose?
Yeah, I think you're giving me way too much credit, so thank you, Matt. I'll Venmo you a couple dollars after this.
That's fully expected. Thank you.
I still operate off of, I guess, what I define and what I've learned as to be a recruiter, a talent partner, if you will. And I think the biggest thing is like building trust, right? Building trust with your client, building trust with your candidate. That's one of our main functions. And I think I have a couple tenets of like main functions of a recruiter. Trust is I think at the very top of that. And so how do you build trust with your client, right? To start off, that's where it all starts. How do you build trust with your client? And one of those is showing up and doing the things that you say you're going to do. And what I mean by showing up is I immerse myself with the team. So I didn't know anything about, roughly about AI besides doing a little bit of Googling and following the trends of the market previously. And I was, my first year at Cruise, 9 months at Cruise, I was in the, product engineering space, Gen Sui / mapping teams. And that was great. But I was able to position my way into our AI space, specifically around our machine learning acceleration team. And at that time, we had a team of 10. And by the time I left, that team hit 100. But my leadership and kind of the work that I've done kind of amplified to around 250. And so talking about that, when we were a team of 10 to start, I had to go to stand-ups. I went to every single stand-up every single day, just trying to understand jargon. Then I would take each person on the team and spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes with them at times just to better understand what they do. What's their elevator pitch? Does that even sound good? Who am I going to be using on calls, on cell calls, in interviews? Right? Like that's just the forefront of what I believe a talent partner should be doing, if you will. And And that's where I ended up having to read a few papers, having to spend tons of hours in GitHub and understanding talent mapping, right? And I want to tell you one funny story, which was to kind of go the opposite way. So we had both of our two leaders in our compiler space, Grishna and Katharamani, who is the best talent partner that I've got to. Not talent partner, client that I got to work with through my time at Cruise, and is doing amazing things. All that to say, we're founding this team, and there's 10 folks on it, and I think it's a collaboration of different folks, but we're there, and they're talking about compilers and low-level computer architecture, and this is all new to me, to be honest, but I follow. But at the end of it, they talk about how our compiler is going to map to an application. And it took me till the third meeting with them to understand, like, hey, you keep talking about an application. And I pulled up my phone. I was like, so like an app on my phone is how your compiler is going to run? And they started busting up laughing, and now it's just a running joke. But I tell that story, and to finish that out, it is the end application of our autonomous vehicle and how folks are actually really driven towards that, right? Because I think there's a mind shift. A lot of the folks that are in this space are coming from the computer architecture world, hardware, software, co-design, if you will, and they have built the software on top of the hardware at hardware companies that are then, these CPUs, GPUs, this hardware is actually going to be installed into a data center a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So they don't actually see the quote unquote end application.
Yeah.
And so being able to speak to folks to say, like, hey, you can go and point to what you've built and have your family even ride in the vehicle was game changing, was another feather in our cap in terms of speaking to the correct audience and using it as our competitive advantage, if you will, throughout the process. So
that's super great, isn't it? And I think I think the biggest resonation is when engineers are able to go on site, ride in the car, see exactly, point to kind of what they're going to be working on. And I think, like you say, a lot of compiler people, hardware, software, co-design individuals usually work on some bit of the puzzle and it's shipped off somewhere, and that's the next. That's really hear about it as well. So to be able to work on a deep learning compiler in a autonomous vehicle company is I can imagine a really exciting prospect for the team as well. Obviously, you mentioned compiler folk, and I know you did a lot of general kind of machine learning acceleration recruitment at Cruise. Out of all of those positions that you were recruiting for, where did you guys struggle the most to hire?
You're putting me in the crosshairs here. Most recently it was the very senior levels within our kernel space, right? There's only it's such a small pond of folks that have OpenCL experience with also dynamic C++ experience in parallel programming.
And I guess one of the challenges that I guess you saw is that I know the bar at Cruise was really, really high, right? You don't just need some kind of C++ engineer that's worked on application, because the stuff that you're building essentially has to be so watertight and robust, because it can essentially, if it goes wrong, that's kind of game over, really. And so the what I liked working with you was the bar was always super, super high, which allowed us to attract really great people for you, and obviously you build really great teams as well. And it was awesome seeing some really incredible names and individuals wow, those guys just hired X and Y. But who do you think, again, in your opinion, was an individual at Cruise, perhaps on the machine learning side, where you really revered them, or you're kind of blown away, or they had such a kind of reputation that you were like, wow, this guy he knows his stuff about kind of machine learning or AI?
Yeah, the one individual that I want to call out is Max Grossman. So a little bit more of a non-traditional background here. Actually, I believe he was co-writer of a book of professional Q to C programming.
Cool.
So I think he was an editor and part author
Awesome.
in its latest edition. All that to say, he wrote the book about CUDA. What I was blown away by with working with Max and through his journey at Cruise, right? He built high performance code for AV software stack, and then he also founded our performance architecture team. But why I think he's a superstar is less so his technical prowess and his capabilities, because that's off the charts. It's, again, going back to what we cared so much about when building the foundations of our MLA organization, which was his EQ, right? I think he has and continues to show this ability of working well with each other, working well with others, coming humble to the table, not pretending to know everything, but then also has this grit and this drive to do what's best always for everyone that's touching this team. And I think you can see it if you're a part of our team, if you're internal, you can see that he has he solves a lot of our problems, and he has knowledge of everything within our stack. So I'd say he's one of the biggest superstars that I've come across and got to work with, for sure. And again, I'm singling him out. There's a ton of folks at Cruise that are absolute superstars. And I'm really proud to have worked with all of those folks and have built an amazing world-class team, for sure.
Awesome. What would you say as one takeaway from Cruise? What was the one biggest thing that you learned whilst obviously your 4.5 kind of years there?
I think it was just my ability to apply what I learned at Grand Rounds and Google. Again, anything is on the table. And I partnered with Garishvin Kazramani very well in the approach of, hey, let's provide a little bit of data, what makes sense, and then let's try it. Let's roll it out. Let's A and B test it. Let's start small, and if it has legs, let's continue to use it.
I love that. And I always think, like, what's your kind of, like, as an agency recruiter, like, some things that we always kind of struggle with is sometimes being a part of someone else's built out kind of process, because we're kind of tagging into something without the context of the whole thing being created as well. So we're just trying to kind of get up to speed with everything. And actually, again, what I like working about with you is that you always kind of, you and your team always kind of put time aside for us to speak to us, take us through the process, kind of what's going on as well. And it seems like communication was a really important piece of the puzzle for you, like internally at Cruise, and it seems like you had internal people, kind of great communicators, and going to those stand-ups and going to those meetings and immersing yourself and being a part of all of that. That is all testament to success. That's all the recipe for success, is just really strong lines of communication, something that resonates with me on a personal level as well. Where do you see biggest challenge perhaps to the AV industry at the moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my main takeaways are that this isn't a technical problem at its current state. Surely we have a lot more to do, and we can talk about the technical piece here, but it's less so of a technical problem, and it's more of, right now, a regulatory problem. But there are a ton of other industries, disciplines that this product touches, right? That insurance, legality, safety, right? There's a ton of things that is not a tech issue, and is part of the reason why the AV industry is, stalling, but is where Cruise is today.
Yeah, and I feel that we've got to a point where I feel that the tech will keep evolving. Even you're going cycles, right, at tech, and people got a lot of stuff right in one startup, and then the next thing will come along and build on that and build on that and build on that. However, when it comes to, like you say, like insurance, like legality, safety, it's definitely, you got like a big bureaucratic like a block of how quick things can move at that stage, because it's not just the government, right? It's a mindset of the collective individuals in America and the world going, and we live in a bubble, right? I'm trying to think that when would autonomous vehicles like be it widely accepted as like a mode of transport? Because a few years ago we might have said, hey, 2026, 2025, that's the kind of time. But now looking at things, I don't know, like 2030s and above, it really is a bit of a black box of policy that takes years and years to change in government. But I just think in the mindset of individuals, like getting in a car and how does that make a decision on a life and death situation, and then what are the implications of. So I think that's obviously what I wanted to cover at Cruise, and that there was some kind of just general questions that I wanted to kind of get into is as well. First off, myself, I'm a new father of a 1.5-year-old. I've got my second child on the way as well in August, and I'm absolutely terrified. A few years ago, I wouldn't have known what I could do and should do when being a father in recruitment and sales. It's not your kind of typical job. Yourself, you've got 2 kids, right here. Like, how old are your children currently?
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, and they run the house for sure.
How do you find the balancing act of trying to be like a good father with trying to do like a really brilliant job at Cruise?
I think it's kind of going back to what we originally talked about in the recruiting function, which is building trust with your client, your leadership, and then with that, being able to roll out processes that are scalable and systemically uplifting, the rest of the team. And so less so much of playing hero ball, if you will, right, where I have to take every shot, but being able to disperse that amongst the team.
Do you ever think about how in 20 years, how AI, the rate of innovation is going to change things for your children?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, already I have my nephews going to coding camps, right? As a start, but now we're able to, there's interviews, and we haven't talked about this yet, but I think we've all seen it on our TikTok reels and our Instagram reels where candidates are taking interviews and using ChatGPT to be able to write the code. And we've come across that, right? And so, how is that going to dynamically shift the way fundamentally people interview tech talent?
I completely agree. And I think one thing that I've definitely learned over the years, again, I grew up kind of like obviously majoritively in the 90s, born in the 80s, but being around when the computer came up, the internet came up, the smartphone, YouTube, like all the kind of booms, and not just being stale, but looking to these platforms and learning, how do I kind of use this to my advantage? How does this integrate with my life as well? I think there's a ton of ways that I'm always looking at internally in our agency at Acceler8. How do we buy back time? I think that's the main thing that I think about, is that how do we optimize like what we're doing? How do we take a mundane task that could take a half an hour and do it in 2 minutes, and buy back some more time to search for the right candidate, to jump on a call with someone, to build a relationship? And I think that in say like 10 years time or whatever, if we spend more time speaking with people, understanding them, building relationships, I think that's going to be a key thing for us later on in life. And I think that's where AI will help us buy back time of writing adverts, writing job specs, all this kind of trudging work, and be able to spend more time with individuals to have a more bespoke experience.
Well, I wanted to piggyback off of what you just said, if that's all right.
For sure.
So I want to shout out Covey. Covey is a platform that is a tool for recruiting and uses AI. So I think one of the ideas that we were talking about is how has AI affected kind of even recruiting? And unfortunately, I haven't used it. I've only dogfooded it a bit, and it's amazing. But exactly to your point of what you just said is like Covey can evaluate thousands of inbound applicants nearly instantly, freeing up the talent team to build strong talent relationships instead of staring at resumes, right? Not only that, it can also find passive talent and then reach out effectively, and then also schedule on your calendar, kind of all with a few clicks. And if the profile comes back and it's not ideal, you can train it exactly what you're looking for in real words, in real time. And so I have a number of folks who've used this that generally say they've cut back their cost by 70% by using this tool. And so this would be my dream ask to use in the future for sure.
And I think there was questions like, hey, what does your dream hiring process look like? And actually these kind of tools in AI cut out a lot of that kind of dog's body work and finding the right people and connecting you with those right individuals. And actually that's the problem that in agencies that we have, is that how do we get consultants to find those right individuals as quick as possible? It all lends itself to us spending more time with people, understanding what they want, what their motivations are, so we can pair them correctly as well. But I think that's kind of it, Hicks. I think we've covered a lot today. We said it was going to be 30 minutes, and look, it's 50 minutes. Well done to anyone that's listened through 50 minutes of this podcast. Yeah, massive kind of round of applause there. But I just want to say, Hicks, this is, again, the point of this podcast is to just shed some light on individuals working in a very competitive kind of space and people who have achieved great things. I mean, your career is fantastic. You've worked at a multitude of different companies. You obviously worked at Cruise, one of the most exciting tech companies worldwide, and were a part of one of the most competitive teams within that space. And I'm glad that we got connected in that way. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show as our first guest. And hey, maybe one day we'll get you. I don't know where you're headed next, but I'm sure there'll be some stories to tell there also as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, I hope we get to run together. Maybe we'll cross paths at I don't know if I'll be running in Boston because that's in a couple of weeks, but my plan is my journey is going from injured last year to running a marathon this year. And really? I've never ran before in my entire life, and so trying to amplify all of this in 1 year is my goal. So wish me luck.
Hey man, I've been through the ringer over the last year, so let's definitely connect. Talk about where I've gone wrong, and hopefully I can help you. Mate, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right.